What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up. Well, tonight we're continuing our discussion of step 10. Last week we started it. Herb wasn't here and he usually kicks it off. Now, remember, we're putting these steps in the context of emotional sobriety and how the steps develop an authentic self-esteem as opposed to a pseudo self-esteem that we all develop in our lives. And Herb is going to kind of give us an overview and an understanding of step 10. And Herb, welcome tonight, and it's great to see you as usual.
Thank you. I need to be made a co-host.
I can do that right now. Unless Brian beat me too. I got him. I beat him. Herb, I got him.
Only because I don't have the power to do that. That's the only chance.
Well, you don't need to be a co-host. You want to be a co-host. It's a preference. It's like you're okay if you're not a co-host.
All right, Tom, you're cutting into my time.
Oh boy, here we go, guys. Here we go.
I need some of your time.
I'm out of here.
Oh, wonderful. My name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. I'm honored to be here to talk a little bit about step 10. And of course, we're in the bondage of addiction, bondage of unmanageability. And it couldn't be a better discussion, especially the word I paid attention to tonight when it was being read, the emotional sobriety was disturbance, which is the key signal for the use of the 10th step. Bill on page 25 in the big book talks about rocketed into the fourth dimension. I see that as in 3 stages, the program of recovery, steps 1 through 9. The first stage is the launch, a relationship with power. The second stage is removing the obstacles to my relationship with myself. The next stage of the next 2 steps, removing the obstacles to others. And by the time we get to the 10th step, Bill suggests that we've entered into the world of the spirit, 4th dimension. Just to make sure that there's no confusion, at least from my understanding of it, the first 3 dimensions are the material world, height, width, and depth. The 4th dimension, and you've been to movies, I'm sure, in the past with 3-dimensional movies with the 3D glasses so that you could see those height, width, and depth. The 4th dimension is the immaterial world. We enter the world of the spirit. Bill suggests that we have recovered. It's the word he dominates the big book with. Not recovery, not recovering, recovered. And on page 84, at the end of the 9th step, he said we're placed in a position of neutrality. Placed in a position of neutrality with regard to our addiction. But we're not cured. We have a daily reprieve from our unmanageability. We're still dealing with the bondage, but this time the bondage of self, not the bondage of addiction. This is, I do believe, the best kept secret in the rooms, at least as I've had some exposure to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and many other 12-step fellowships also through my workshops. The best kept secret. And that is, what does unmanageability mean? What does not cured mean? What does daily reprieve mean? Step 10 is we enter the world of the spirit. I use the model of a body, mind, and will as the model of a human being. These are addressed in each of the steps and all of the steps. An intervention in terms of our addiction, through the first 9 steps, we have recovered, placed in a position of neutrality, physical sobriety. It's guaranteed. Page 84, check it out. Placed, grace, in a position of neutrality through the process, the power of this methodology of the first 9 steps. But we're not cured. Not with regard to our addiction, but with regard to our unmanageability. We have a daily reprieve. We're rocketed into the 4th dimension, which is a relationship with other, that power, that life force, that energy, that you fill in the blank, power other than ourselves, and a relationship with others, the community of humanity. We're not cured. We have a practice of step 10, emotional sobriety, which includes the practice of step 11, improved understanding of consciousness. Step 12, enlarged effectiveness through our compassion. We're in orbit around the light. And as long as we are in relationship with the light, we have the freedom of empowerment. But there are clouds in us, those instincts gone awry, fight, flight, and freeze, resentment, fear, and dishonesty, all coming out of our selfishness and self-centeredness. We had a deflation of the ego at depth in the first 9 steps. But Dr. Thibault said, our ego has an uncanny way of regenerating itself. So ask yourself, do you have a sense of well-being today, here, as you're talking, as you're listening to me, as you're participating in this discussion, this gathering of people who are interested in emotional sobriety? Do you have it? Do you have a sense of well-being? Do you have a sense of contentment? This is the promise of the effective application of 10, 11, and 12, emotional sobriety. I look at the brain, I'm not a brain official or specialist, but the simplicity of it is that we have a brain stem, that first brain that sits on the top of our spinal cord that regulates our physical survival. What we eat, what we drink, how, when, and with whom we mate. That limbic system, thousands, millions of years of development for emotional response, for survival purposes, our fight, flight, and freeze instincts. But fortunately, millions of years later, humans emerged with this cortex that gives us the function of knowing and deciding. We have a mind that thinks and knows that self-reflects. The only sentient being that can do that in the best of our science right now. We have an ability to make a completely voluntary decision. Now, the big book suggests in step 1 that it's not voluntary with regard to addiction. We have no power. Our body is deficient, our mind is deficient. But it also suggests that we have not effective power with regard to navigating our life, that it's unmanageable, unaided. And in step 2, it suggests that we reach out for power. Step 1, I need help. Step 2, help's available. Keep it really simple. One of the philosophers, Gurdjieff, a Russian, said, most human beings are asleep, dreaming that they're awake. It's brilliant. Robots, zombies, going through life asleep. And the whole purpose of this process is to wake up, to look at our beliefs, the lenses through which we look that are distorted, but that get reground in steps 1 through 9. But the ego regenerates if left unattended. And our emotions tell us. That's why that word disturbed in the letter stood out to me today. It's the key, disturbed. So you don't have to think in specificity. If I'm uncomfortable, the 12 and 12 in step 10 says it's a spiritual axiom. There's something wrong with me. Something is amiss. I'm out of alignment with reality. The word alignment's not in the big book, but it's the word I use for step 3. A commitment to be in alignment with reality by doing steps 4 through 9 and turning from my self-centeredness to other-centeredness to be in alignment with reality as it is. When I'm disturbed, that spot check inventory, no matter what the cause, through step 4, I certainly learned and experienced that I'm the source of my own trouble. I don't have a part in my trouble. Please hear this. You hear it all the time in the meetings. What's my part? What's your part? I understand the spirit of that. I don't have a part in the trouble in my life. I don't have a part in my resentment. I own it 100%. The trouble in my life is coming from my reaction to the trouble from circumstances, event, and people. People and circumstances and events are just they're in play. They're in play. Reality is manifesting, reality is evolving, reality is unpacking all around me. And it doesn't cooperate with my story, my wants, my needs, my demands, my script. And I didn't know that I didn't know, and I couldn't see that I didn't see. Bill says, watch for. Vigilance is the principle that I've determined to be the principle of step 10, vigilance, watch for. The things that we looked at in step 4, those instincts gone awry coming from fight, flight, and freeze. It's just survival instincts. They're not bad or good. They're misused and dysfunctional, unhealthy and inappropriate. And so he says we take action in step 10. It's a tool that we keep with us like our cell phones. A tool that we use on the spot check inventory. Thank God for the 12 and 12, which confirms the use of. The big book suggests the formula, but it's not quite clear. And in fact, there's some confusion both in the big book and in the step 10, even on Bill's part. But as at least I understand it, step 10 is to be used during the day, during the working hours, a radar check. If there's a blip on the radar screen, then I'm to take action at that moment, not in writing, not at night. Doesn't matter if you do it at night. It doesn't matter if you do it in writing. There's no rules on this whole thing, but let's try to understand the tools as they're meant to be used, at least by my understanding of it. I pray. Why do I pray? Well, because I'm powerless. Prayer doesn't change God. Prayer doesn't change reality. Prayer is my intention that makes me conscious so that I can change. I discuss it with somebody. Why do I do that? Well, because I'm human and I need accountability. I think the most important moving part of the 12-step program is accountability, sponsorship, step guide, whatever you call it, companion. Because if you have a relationship with an accountability partner, you'll do all the other moving parts. I make an amend if I've created mischief, problems with somebody. Normally, if I'm disturbed, I'm going to be disturbing you. That's I like to share. And then the final turning is to be helpful, thinking about or helping somebody else. The brilliance of Bill's words in the big book are that it doesn't involve action, the final phase of helping. He said, we think about how we can contribute to somebody else. Knowing with good psychology that as in fact we think we will eventually act, and thinking about somebody else takes us out of ourselves and back eventually translates into action. And this is just my own chart as the antidote, and the outcome and results are the opposite of the instincts gone awry. Forgiveness, the antidote to resentment. Trust, the antidote to fear. Dishonesty, the antidote to dishonesty. Rigorous, the big book suggests in chapter 5, rigorous honesty is the key. Recently, Dr. Berger circulated a wonderful 10-minute presentation by a psychiatrist that talked about radical honesty. If you haven't seen it, try to get it someplace, because it's worth watching, not just because of the content, but also because of the way it's communicated. It's very state of the art. But also to be helpful. Notice selfishness and help and helpful are all in all caps. Selfishness is the center post of the spiritual malady, the cancer of the soul. And the antidote is to think about being helpful and then to actually put your feet into action and helping somebody else. That's emotional sobriety. Turning from my self-centeredness to other-centeredness in the balanced way, not in the codependent way, but in the balanced way where you're really helping and not enabling, where you're really taking care of yourself in balance with somebody else, where you're in full independence while you're being interdependent. And that's going to be the prayer if you choose to invite me to pray at the end, an adaptation of the 7-step prayer. But it's a tool to be used like the cell phone. And the best analogy I have for that is the GPS. Is that I don't know where I'm going, but I have an address. I don't know how to get there. And I put the address in the GPS, and then I listen to the GPS and I take directions. I might get off course, but the GPS will tell me you need to make a U-turn, or you should have taken a right turn rather than a left turn, and they recalibrate it. And eventually I'll get to where I'm going if I've got if I know where I'm going, if I have the right address, and if I listen to the GPS, right? God positioning system. I know we're real cute with acronyms in AA, and I heard it from somebody else. But it's just a wonderful, as long as I'm listening and following direction, I will get to where it is I want to go. The 10-step is the tool for the GPS, guiding me to stay in alignment with reality. When I get out of alignment with reality through self-will, the 10-step brings me back into alignment with reality itself. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Herb. All right, start bringing some folks back in for the discussion. I see Joe C. Bring Joe in the house.
Yeah, I'm having trouble find. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
I got him. Ha ha ha.
There he
I
is.
beat you.
I have hair envy.
I know. Me too, man. Well, let me start out by saying a few things, and then we'll have Tom go, and then Joe will kind of be the cleanup hitter today. You know, I think that this you've called this before, or we've called it before, Herb, the step of emotional sobriety.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've really felt like that, my God, you know, if the steps are designed to help us find and achieve emotional sobriety, this is the culmination of it. And
Yeah.
why is that so? What happens? Well, Bill says it very clearly here when he's talking about this step, right? Continue to take personal inventory. When wrong, promptly admit it. He calls this the acid test.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, can we stay sober, keep in emotional balance, and live a good purpose under all, I emphasize, under all conditions? Under all conditions. This is what this step is to help us do. It's almost like we've been forging a tool through the first 9 steps to now help us be able to meet life, as you said, on life's terms. This is the steps that moves us away from a consciousness that says I'm okay if, to a consciousness that says I'm okay even if. This is what emotional sobriety is. It's freedom. And this step is about freedom, is about finding that balance and being able to deal with life. Now, sometimes, as you guys know, I'm going through a crisis. I haven't gotten that balance yet. I'm still in the middle of struggling with this for months now. But I have faith that if I keep struggling in the way I'm struggling, and with the help from all of my friends, and many of which are here tonight, that, you know, I'm going to not only get through this thing, but I'm going to be a better, you know, I'm going to be deeper in terms of the work I'm doing. You know, Ernie Larson calls it stage 3 recovery. When we start to dig into these traumas and starting to deal with them in our life, we're really now in stage 3 recovery. So Roger is not here. He will be back to talk about self-esteem with this, but I'll turn it over to Thom Rutledge and then Joe. And then if we got some time, we'll open it up for some people to share.
Well, thanks, Herb and Alan. And if anybody's out there who knows how to do, you know, apps and stuff like that, somebody needs to make a GPS that after it recalibrates you a couple of times, actually sounds irritated. We need a GPS that says recalculating. You know, it's like later just saying, "Do you want my help or not?" But that I wrote in the biggest letters on my little notebook pad tonight, Herb, when you were talking, is the title of this was "Living from the Fourth Dimension." I just liked that. I love the fourth, and so while you were talking, I think I was listening because I made more notes, but I was also you set me to thinking about what living from the fourth dimension would be, and I'll keep thinking about this, but right now what I have, and that's my favorite thing to do when we're doing this stuff, is just talk about what I'm thinking of right this moment. It's the broadest context, you know, because I also wrote, I feel like I'm in good company, because I also wrote step 10 is the practice of emotional sobriety. And what you guys just said, it's like, it's because it's being in the present moment, it's being fully responsible for myself, and it's being the best version of myself that I can be, which is to me what the purpose is from the broadest context. And when I say the broadest context, I think about throughout my life, throughout my day, whatever, you know, the values I use may vary depending on the context. So it's maybe, okay, well, this situation is about my job, and this is what's going on. This is the politics of my job. So that's why I made this particular decision to act in this way. Or this is about my relationship, or even my history of relationships. So that's why I did that. But to me, the broadest context is the mission, my belief in the fact that I'm on a mission for beginning in 1954, and I'm figuring, I'm guessing 2038 for me is when I'm making my exit, but we'll see. But it's the mission of being Thom Rutledge. And it's like, and you know, I read in a meditation from my Stoicism book the other morning, is the answer to the question, why did you do the right thing, should always be and only be because it's the right thing. You know, not because I'm going to get this out of it, or it's going to benefit me, or that. And to me, that's the biggest challenge, is to really let myself take that responsibility, say my job in this time has been, it feels like I've, you know, I don't know what's to come so far, but at this point in my life, I feel like that feels very clear to me, that I'm doing much better. I feel, talk about self-esteem, I feel much better about myself when I'm making decisions from that fourth dimension, from that broad context in which I'm here to be the best version of me, period. Amen.
Thanks, Thom.
Thanks.
Hallelujah. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Herb. Thanks, everybody. Great to be here. it never gets old. I love having Herb around, and I've worked with him on a couple of things, and it's just I'm a day older every time I listen to it, and I get something more out of it.
Yeah.
And it's good to see everybody here. For anyone early in recovery, something I heard recently and borrowed. By next week, I'll be saying, as I've always said. But it goes like this. You can right away, no lineup, no worry, no sponsor needed, no referral needed, no letter from your doctor needed. If you're new in recovery, you can work any step that starts with 1. Like, why wouldn't you review before you act? Why wouldn't you be mindful in your day? And how could that not help early recovery? Why would you not help another still suffering alcoholic?
Mhm.
Hi, you're 1 day sober. I'm 2.
Mhm.
Like, that's all of those things can be done right now. And
Mhm.
and 10 kind of encapsulates, well, yes, for people, the reading started out talking about oldsters. Now, I don't, let me tell you something about AA currency. Today, I'm 17,001 days sober. And does that give me greater currency than someone with 17 days sober? No. Currency is measured when you go to your business meeting to see how many votes I get compared to everybody else in the room. I get 1 vote as 1 member in AA, and my story and my experience has the same worth, absolute worth, but not greater than or equal to any of the other members there. And but here we're talking about oldsters who aren't finding emotional sobriety. And what could that be? For starters, it's emotional sobriety, not unemotional sobriety. The objective of working the 12 steps and being in recovery isn't to avoid or transcend my human experience. It's to be able to completely give myself to it, that trust that Herb talked about, like all in the game of life, which means hurting, which means awe, which means challenge. If you prefer the word recovered instead of recovering, well, yes, because I am becoming. I'm not I'm a long way from the last time I used drugs and alcohol, and but I'm hopefully a little ways away from dead. So I am still becoming. That is going to be chaotic. It is going to have some order to it, but it is unknown and unknowable exactly where it's going. And what else would I just say? What a friend of Herb's and mine, and probably others here, Jay, we were talking about 30 years of sobriety. And I said, well, anyone 30 years sobriety goes, it's not all the same. And I said, do tell. And he said, well, Joe, there's some people who have had 30 years of sobriety. Every day a new experience, every year a new challenge. And other people that have had a year of sobriety 30 times. Sort of, they found a routine, they've got a groove, they enjoy it. But it's, if you don't see them, if you miss them at the state convention for 5 years and then you bump into them again, you didn't miss much. They're sort of telling the same stories to the same people, experiencing the same things. And I wouldn't for a minute shit all over finding a groove and staying in it, right? But for me, that would make recovery a repetitive strain disorder. And I'll take the added challenge of, adding the unknown to that, and having a beginner's mind with everything. Every new person I work with, I expect to learn something. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe I can be helpful. We're fellow travelers. There's no teacher or student. I got no degree in AA. And so step 10, ready, steady, go, everybody, now. Thanks.
Right.
Thank you, Charlie. That's great.
Thanks.
There was a couple notes in the chat that I just want to read. So the question was, are these recordings available on a YouTube channel? The answer is yes. Patrick posted something earlier in the chat. Patrick, would you repost that now so people can go to that link? Someone asked if I could repeat that statement about I'm okay even if versus I'm okay if, right? And that's what step 10 is telling us. Step 10 is to help us get to I'm okay even if, right? That's where the freedom comes from, is that we have a way of dealing with things that even if they're tsunamis and we're drowning, that's what Thom Rutledge would say. Alan, you're not hit by waves, you're in a tsunami. In a tsunami now. I am in a tsunami now, and there's a way that I'm going to be able to survive this tsunami. It's not going to happen as fast as I want it to. It's just these things don't. But I will, by staying pressed up against it. My good friend Herb says, and stay gently pressed up against it, Alan, not like a Marine, right? I'm going to stay pressed up against this. No, I'm going to stay pressed up against it and let this thing flow, cry when I need to cry, rage when I need to cry, do all the things I need to do to flow with this experience and see where it goes.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved, the forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. The first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. We're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.